Welcome back to Tuesdays with Tim, the podcast that touches on all things related to brain injuries among children and those who have been impacted by my son Luke. Today we have a very special guest, Glenn Bates. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
So, Glenn, you and I met last week for lunch, and you told me the story about Noah.
Yes, I'd be happy to share that. So on May 15th of 2022, my wife and I received the call that no family ever wants to receive. Our precious son Noah, he was 11 years old, had left with a group of friends to go to a large ranch in West Texas to celebrate a birthday party for one of his friends. And unfortunately, over the course of the 3 days he was out there, there was a tragic accident that occurred on Sunday, the 15th of May. He was involved in a UTV rollover accident and was killed instantly. And, there was a whole bunch of just raw feelings that rushed through as I received that call. And then having to set down my wife and our teenage daughter and share the news that our beloved son and brother was tragically killed on that day.
Glenn, so many people have said to me these words, I can't imagine. And for me, sometimes my response is, neither can I, although I'm living it. And when I hear you share this, I simply cannot imagine what it was like to receive the call, and then more importantly, even to share it with your wife and daughter. I just, what was that like for you?
It was really a very gut-wrenching experience for me. And obviously, neither one of them were prepared for the news, nor was I prepared to deliver that news. And it's just incredibly um, difficult to talk about even to this day. However, it is something that has to be discussed because there is a need. There's lots of people grieving in the world over a variety of things. It doesn't have to be death. It could be loss of job. It could be divorce. It could be just a gamut of things that people grieve over. And there's not enough resources out there to prepare people um, for a tragedy like this when it knocks on your door. And somehow, some way, by the grace of God, he equipped me on that day to handle this tragedy and be able to be there for my wife and my daughter as family, friends, and an incredible community surrounded us with love and affection.
It's only been 2.5 years, and I'm sure there are days it feels like 2.5 days because in my situation, it's been 3 years and a couple of months. And especially during this time of the year, Thanksgiving, Christmas time, the holidays are so difficult. But you mentioned something that I think everyone needs to hear, and that is that you felt God equipped you with the ability to almost find peace instantaneously.
Yes, it was kind of an out of body experience because I know me and I know the love I have for my family and the love I had for my son. And there's no way that I could have faced all of those conversations and just the broad gamut of decisions that had to be made, within an hour of getting the call that he was gone. I was also getting a call from the funeral home wanting to know how I wanted them to process his body. And it was just too much. It
Mm.
was so overwhelming. And again, I could not have done that without the presence of God bringing me peace and comfort during that time.
Noah was 11, is that correct?
Yes.
And in a few seconds, we're going to talk a little bit about what you've established. But Noah was with other children, I guess his age on this off-road vehicle.
Yes, there was two other boys that was on there, his best friends at the time of the accident, and those poor boys witnessed and observed things that 11-year-old boys should not have to witness and observe. And they had to grow up that day in a very chaotic environment and become young men as they were asked to pull their friend's body from the wreckage as parents were trying to lift the vehicle off of him
Mm.
as they were waiting on emergency vehicles to get there. And that's something that I can't even begin to fathom the range of emotions that those precious two young boys had just roaring through their bodies that day.
My first reaction in hearing that is that I assume that those now young men um, have had some counseling or needed some counseling, and that takes me to you and your wife. You know, so often you hear the statistic that what up to almost 90% of marriages fail because of the loss of a child. And when we talked last week, um, you had mentioned to me the opposite, and that you and Katie have never been closer. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, and you're spot on with that statistic. But again, I attribute this to my deep faith in Jesus Christ. And Katie and I made a decision real quick, and it's kind of a cliche, but I said to her, babe, we either have to get busy living or we have to get busy dying. And we chose that we were going to get busy living.
Mm.
And the only way that you can do that is to lean into the pain. And man, as you know, Tim, it is super painful. But by leaning into the pain, we not only grew closer to one another, but we also grew closer to Jesus Christ. And as bad as this event was, there has been so much good that has come out of this.
Mm.
I can't even comprehend how we went from there to here, but I would tell you God is good all the time.
And I would also echo that so much good has come from my son's injury and then subsequent passing because of what we've established with Team Live Hope for Minds and helping families all over the country who need education, support, and all that. And that leads me to what you have established with the Noah Bates Memorial Foundation. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength, a lot of fight to do what you have done. Um, I just want to hear exactly, tell me all about this foundation and what you would like to see things happen over the next few years.
Well, we started the Noah Bates Memorial Foundation, first and foremost to honor our son and keep his memory alive as we proceeded on through life. And the mission of our foundation is to educate and raise awareness to the inherent dangers of ATVs and UTVs, to educate not only kids, but parents in proper, safe riding techniques that maximizes their ability to stay safe and come home after being on these vehicles. We also have spoken in independent school districts and bringing our message and our educational curriculum to these school districts to talk to kids, specifically going into the fall when hunting season is about to fire off. And we're going to send these kids into the darkness with a rifle to, get that gigantic buck, but nobody ever teaches them anything about the vehicle. We have also partnered up, which somewhat aligns with your foundation, with Texas Health Resources. And in April, we will be speaking at their National Trauma Convention Center And our foundation will be the only keynote speakers that are not in the medical profession. And they've asked us to come in and share our story and how the back end of that trauma has impacted our lives and changed our lives forever.
Our stories are so eerily similar with ATV, but for us, a modified golf cart. And I think what you said is so important. It's not just educating the children, it's educating the adults. And I remember talking to parents and, well, my kid can drive really well in a golf cart, or my kid can do this. But what we don't realize is if you're not educated on what actually you are driving or your child is driving, whether it's taller, faster, which means it tips over. And regardless of how often someone has been on a vehicle like this, the precautions are so vital. Have you had a lot of pushback or feedback from parents when it comes to the education of this?
I wouldn't say that we've had a lot of pushback. I think a lot of times we get a nod and a wink and they go about business as usual. But we have had a testimony from one family that they said the loss of our son saved their daughter's life because a couple of months after Noah's passing, their daughter was in a UTV accident and she had the courage to buckle up. And she was the only one that stayed inside of the vehicle and eluded harm in that accident. So those kinds of stories are so precious to us.
Right.
It's like in your foundation, you're making a difference and you're impacting lives, but you really sometimes can't measure the impact that you're truly having. But getting testimonials back like that sure validates the need for what we're doing and just invigorates us to press forward even harder and faster.
You're exactly right, because I talk to parents about putting seatbelts in golf carts, but also specifically wearing a helmet. And there are parents that I'm sure are thinking, yes, we hear what you're saying, but my son is different. My son's athletic. My son would never, and yet it happens. And in your case, this tragedy has affected your family, has affected the boys' families, and then the school. And so it affects so many people, and you are making a tremendous impact. And what you've done in just a couple of years is fantastic. How do you see the foundation moving forward, let's say the next couple of years?
Well, I believe that over the next couple of years, through some doors that's been open to us, I believe that we're going to be able to share our message on a much broader audience. And I see us traveling the United States and speaking not only to schools, but being engaged in more hospitals across the United States and sharing our message with them. And I believe as a result of that, we will be able to bring more awareness to the need.
Mm. How
and
oh, go ahead, sorry.
and just change lives and thought processes about this whole, you touched base just a moment ago, and I just want to go back. You were talking about, well, I'm an athlete, kids. Well, my son's an athlete. He's fine, right? Well, a friend of mine, Christopher Johnson, who played for, I believe, 12 seasons in the NFL and has a Super Bowl ring with the Baltimore Ravens. I spoke with him about 6 months ago, and he was involved as a world champion athlete in an ATV accident in his front yard. He was hospitalized for in excess of 6 months, and they did not expect him to live. But by the grace of God, he's still here. So it doesn't matter where you come from or your background, you're not excluded from tragedy. And I promise you, he has a different respect and appreciation for the dangers of these vehicles than he ever had in his life up to the point that he almost didn't make it himself.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. How do people follow you guys on Facebook or your website?
You can follow us on Facebook the Noah Bates Memorial Foundation. You can follow us on Instagram at NBMF32. And you can visit our website at nbmf32.org.
I talked to you last week about the number three and how, just a little while ago, I sent a text to someone and she responded by saying it was 3:33 when you sent that text. And so that number three hits me every day. You told me about the number 32.
Yes, every day, 32 is front and center. It shows up all the time. It could be the placard that you get when you go to Whataburger. It could be picking up your phone and looking at it because you know you have a meeting coming up and it might be 2:32. My wife wakes up almost every night at some point on the hour with 32 in the minutes.
Mm.
So these are I look at those as God winks. That's just a reminder
Yeah,
that they're ever present with us.
I agree. I want to have just a brief conversation now about grief. You know, my wife and I grieve differently. She saw Luke's injury as more devastating than his passing, and she was, you could really say she was relieved that Luke passed because of his quality of life. I grieve so differently, and in a lot of ways, selfishly. I was so focused on my own trauma, and I was so distraught and devastated. How have you and your wife, when it comes to grieving and the counseling that you both have received? I know communication is so vital with this. Tell me a little bit about how that has transpired for the two of you.
You know, I really think, Tim, we would still be curled up in the fetal position to this day if it wasn't for the work that we've put in through our a grief counselor, Dr. Tanya Cunningham. She has totally changed our life from the day that we first met her up to now, 2.5 years later. Her counsel has just been so fantastic for us. For for Katie and I, we both allowed each other the space to grieve in our own time and in our own way, because no two grief journeys are the same, as you just mentioned, between you and your wife.
Mhm.
And if you can grant each other the space to feel what you feel when you feel it and how you feel it, and be there for each other in whatever capacity that's needed, man, it's a game changer.
Mm.
And it just, I believe that the approach that we took by leaning into the pain, receiving great counsel, not only did it grow us together closer as a couple, but it's helped us heal a little bit every day. And it's allowed us to press into this foundation because, as you well know, when you do a foundation and there's something like this involved, every day you got to live your worst nightmare.
Exactly.
And that is that is a tough thing to do
Mm.
day in and day out, but we have to do it. There's lives to be saved.
Mm.
And we are committed to fulfilling the mission of this foundation, which is to educate, raise awareness, and save lives,
Mm.
and offer grief services to those in need.
Leaning into pain, that is profound for sure. How is your daughter?
Our daughter is 19. She just moved away this summer to college. She plays Division II college volleyball, and she is absolutely thriving.
Mm. That's wonderful. And just I think we can discuss grief, we can discuss the pain, but it all boils down to our faith, as you said, in Jesus Christ. My faith has been tested every day since July 28th of 2015, but I couldn't do what I'm doing today without my faith in God. And it was a process to forgive and to to basically look myself in the mirror and work on me. And you guys, after just 2.5 years, I tell you, Glenn, when I left lunch with you, I was thinking to myself, you're in a better place than I am, and in a year less time. And so, you're an inspiration to all those in your neighborhood, in your school, and what you're doing with this foundation. And Team Luke Hope for Minds certainly looks forward to partnering and being involved and doing all that we can to help, because there's a lot of similarities. We have children with brain injuries from non-fatal drownings and car accidents, but a lot of them are also from ATV and golf carts. So I'm just so blessed to have gotten to know you. Look forward to building a relationship, and so appreciative of what you're doing. And I wish you and your family all the best. And I look forward to keeping in touch. And Glenn, thank you so much for sharing this today and for doing what you're doing each and every day.
Well, Tim, thank you for inviting me on to speak about our story. I so appreciate that opportunity, and I look forward to partnering with you as we walk this journey out going forward. I think collectively we can do great things together.
Amen. Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Tuesdays with Tim. If you found today's episode helpful, please be sure to follow and share so others can find support. For additional resources and support, visit teamlukehopeforminds.org. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. If you have a story you would like to share or a topic you would like for us to cover, please reach out. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Together, we can continue to raise awareness and support for families caring for children with brain injuries. Until next time, take care and keep fighting like Luke.